Educational Communications and this station present Environmental Directions with Nancy Pearlman. On this series, we explore the effects of human influence on the Earth's ecosystems and discuss solutions to environmental problems which affect the quality of life on this planet. Environmental Directions gives you the kind of information you need to help you participate in decisions impacting your community, the nation, and the world. Now, here's your host, Nancy Pearlman.
Hello. My guest is Shel Horowitz. He is a transformpreneur, an activist with the Jewish Activists for Immigration Justice, and an author of over 10 books, mostly on marketing, as well as the intersection of business, social change, and the environment. His most recent book is Guerrilla Marketing to Heal the World, Combining Principles and Profit to Create the World We Want. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Well, thank you, Nancy. Good to be with you.
You have to explain this word transformpreneur. It's a hard one to pronounce.
Transformpreneur is the word transform coupled with the second half of entrepreneur, because the idea is that business can be a tool of transformation and we can transform our own businesses and that we can make a profit doing the right thing. I think the preneur part is important because it has to do with what we do being profitable, making products and services and marketing them that address things like hunger or poverty or war or racism or catastrophic climate change in a meaningful way.
You are trying to get businesses to green their company, make them more ecological, because you believe that green marketing is a mandate from nature. Is nature talking to you?
Nature definitely talks to me. Yes, I'm out in nature every day. It's quite loud, actually. But green is only one part of it. Green is sustainability, and that's important, but sustainability is keeping things where they are, and I want to see things go regenerative, getting better than they are. So, to me, green is the first step. You have to green your operations before you have any credibility in making the deeper changes, because if you're part of the problem, then it's hard to be part of the solution. Yeah, so I really look at how can a business actually make things better for someone in poverty. I help to find solutions to conflicts that are not based in violence. I help people to reclaim the equity that is naturally theirs rather than what we're just coming out of a long period of shame in the United States where racism was public policy. It's just all of these things are more than just staying where we are or even getting back to where we were in, say, 2015. It's really about creating the world we want to live in.
As an environmentalist, I want a world where our lifestyles, our business operations, our governmental policies all keep the environment in mind and recognize that we as humans have a responsibility to protect our ecosystems, not just for ourselves, for our health, not having pollution, but also for the other species. And yet I still see so many companies ready to exploit the natural resources, ready to go in and do oil drilling in wildlife refuges, ready to have terrible operations along our coastlands or destroy our wetlands. Are we seeing any kind of change within these larger corporations that are involved in extraction of our resources?
We absolutely are, Nancy. It's got a long way to go, and I would submit that we don't actually need to be drilling for fossil fuels, that we have all the energy we need in abundance from totally green, renewable sources. But we're not there yet as a society. However, what's interesting is that all of these big companies like ADM, all the mining companies and the agribiz companies and all the rest of it, they have realized that the planet is finite. They have realized that they can't just externalize all the costs the way they did in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Pretty much all of them will have at least a sustainability coordinator. Most of them will have a sustainability department, but there's still so much more that could be done. I'm really a believer in the concepts of like cradle to cradle, where all of the inputs going into making something also have another path beyond that, where basically nothing is thrown away and everything is reused.
But some of these companies that are finding the regulations, which I believe in, because if they're not going to do the right thing, we, the public, have to regulate them to not pollute the waters, not pollute the air, to have a healthy operation for their workers. And when they don't like it in the United States, they're going to the poor countries in Asia and Africa, which don't have so many controls and which want their money, and yet they are harming and destroying communities in so many other places in the world. Can't they be more responsible anywhere in the world?
Well, sure they can. And I'm reminded of the old cliche about the carrot and the stick. Government regulation, of course, is the stick, and the carrot is the ability to build a really viable, successful, thriving business by doing the right thing. Because let me talk for a moment about the business case for doing the right thing. Besides avoiding government regulation, you have a much more loyal client base who will then go out and tell their friends about your great company. You have a much more loyal employee base, which means you're not spending enormous amounts of money hiring and retraining and trying to catch up with high turnover because people hate to work for you. Instead, you're having employees telling their friends, oh, hey, there's a vacancy in the department next to mine. I think you'd be really good at it. So the costs of doing business go down. They go down again when your supply chain is such that you're not creating a lot of waste and therefore not having to pay to dispose of the waste. You're not wasting a lot of fuel, so you're not having to pay high energy costs for very low value. So you're saving money, and then there's the revenue side where you're making money by selling things that people want in ways that help the environment, the earth, all the people and other species that you mentioned earlier to get where they want to be. So it's really quite exciting, actually, because business is not usually seen as a catalyst for social and environmental change, but it actually can be. And companies that understand this, a few that people have heard of, Patagonia in the clothing sphere, Ben & Jerry's ice cream, oddly enough, Walmart.
That's strange.
It is strange, but if you think about it, Walmart is a very, very bottom-line driven company. They're not tree huggers. Okay, you can make a case that Ben & Jerry's or Patagonia are founded by tree huggers. Walmart is totally about the business purpose, but they figured out a long time ago that if they can cut their fuel costs, cut their lighting costs, cut the amount of waste they have to dispose of in their grocery departments, and at the same time find new markets. Like, believe it or not, the last time I checked, Walmart was selling more organic food than Whole Foods.
That's surprising.
And the really interesting thing to me is that they were selling it to people who ain't never going to go to Whole Foods in their lives. I don't choose to shop at Walmart because I'm not happy with their labor policies and a bunch of other stuff, but I am delighted that they're doing what they're doing to actually double the market for organics and to sell the low-E light bulbs and all the rest of it.
It's important that the sustainable practices and ecological products like organic foods is available in the mainstream because, as you point out, the average person doesn't want to make a special trip to a specialty store. Mm-hmm. What I find different from the past when I started this radio show in the 70s is the fact that companies do now, as you say, have sustainability departments, want to be more ecological, or at least claim that they are being more ecological. And when I started my radio show, I would invite some on, and they say, no, you're for the environment, we're for the economy. And now we see that there's a switch, that those two really do come together. And yet often I find that companies are doing what I call greenwashing. I interview some companies with new products and they say how great that product is, and I say, well, what is your whole operation like? Is your factory green and sustainable? Mm-hmm. Where are you sourcing the materials? Are they fair trade? Are they not polluting in those places? And they don't know.
Well, they're not doing their homework then. And it's true, there are whole industries that do greenwashing. In my activism, I have been very, very involved in the 70s particularly in the fight to keep nuclear power from spreading. Nuclear power is a horrible technology. My first book was 300 pages about why it's horrible. The nuclear industry tries to tell us that it's green, that it's low carbon, all of this absolute nonsense. So the consumers do have to vet any claims. And one way to vet claims is by looking at certifications. You mentioned, for example, fair trade certification. If a company has that seal on it, then you know that they have labor-friendly practices. They're not doing child slaves. They're not doing some of the other really atrocious things because they can't put that certification on unless they've earned it. But you also have to watch out. Some companies do what's called self-certification. They make up some certification. They give it to themselves. shelves and it means nothing. So it is important to vet. Looking at the consumer side of things, most of the companies that are making a green claim have at least some validity there, but it's important to do your homework, and there are places out there. Green America, for example, has some metrics about who is actually doing the right thing and who is not. There are other scorecards out there.
You mentioned nuclear power. They have been promoting themselves as clean, but they're not. Their radioactive waste will last for tens or hundreds of thousands of years.
220,000 years is the half-life of plutonium. Now, we have no experience with that kind of timeline. If you think about what are the oldest human artifacts that we know about, and they're like 30, 40,000 years. So we have absolutely no experience with not only maintaining an artifact that long, but maintaining it totally sealed off from the environment, making sure that people can read instructions in a language that was written in 1900s or 2000s as opposed to the 25,000s. We have no idea what language is going to look like. If you think about it, I don't know a lot of people who are speaking even ancient Latin, let alone prehistoric, whatever those first languages were 30,000 years ago. So these are very real issues, and it's one of the many arguments against nuclear power.
Indeed, there's so much that we can talk about because you've authored so many books about the importance of marketing in relationship to social change and the environment. Your latest book, Guerrilla Marketing to Heal the World, Combining Principles and Profit to Create the World We Want, is on PDF. You don't want to cut down the trees.
Well, it's also in a paper version.
Can you sum up the points that you want people to learn more about if they read the book?
Sure. Well, for starters, the idea that you can have both a profit and a social mission or an environmental mission, that it's actually cheaper and easier to achieve success if you are having a larger agenda than the bottom line, that all of the research shows that these initiatives pay off very well in the business world in terms of revenue and profit, and that it's not that hard. We've been told all along that all of these changes are really hard and we can't do them, and we just have to live with it. It's not true. In fact, COVID has shown us that we can pivot any sector we want, and not that slowly either. COVID, of course, was a terrible thing in a lot of ways, but one thing it did is it shook all our assumptions and showed us that there are other ways to do things, and that we are creative and resilient, and we can come up with these other things. I've been saying for many, many years that we have all the technology we need to fix most of the world's problems, and what we don't have is the willpower.
In the next few years, do you think that companies will all adopt more ecological principles and practices?
Well, they already are, Nancy. It's interesting to see. Just a year ago, the Business Roundtable came out with a statement that all of a sudden they consider it okay to look at things other than short-term profit. Now, this is revolutionary because these are America's and the world's biggest companies. We're talking about General Motors and General Electric and General Mills. To have that come from the heart of corporate America was a pleasant shock. I've been to a couple of conferences, the Responsible Business Summit and the Reuters Next conference that was held virtually in early 2021. And the speakers are all from companies like Nestle or Ford or Coca-Cola. Big business understands this. Big business has to have its feet held to the fire to make sure they're doing it the right thing in the right way and in the right measure. But every single company that's got any kind of major presence at all is grappling with these issues and trying to figure out both how to do better for the planet and also how to make the most marketing hay and public relations from doing what they're doing.
You are certainly providing some excellent advice to companies that want to market in a green way, and you have made that information available to the public. I want to thank you so very much for being a guest on my program.
You're very welcome, and my website is goingbeyondsustainability.com. If anybody wants to explore this further, I will happily make a 15-minute phone call with any of your listeners, and that will be no charge, just to explore how your particular venture might put some of these ideas into practice.
I hope people will take advantage of your wonderful offer. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have been speaking with Shel Horowitz, who is an author and a transformpreneur. I'm Nancy Pearlman. Thank you very much for joining us, and do tune in again next week.
If you would like free information about these environmental issues, go to www.ecoprojects.org or call 310-559-9160. Environmental Directions with your host, Nancy Pearlman, is a community affairs program of the nonprofit organization Educational Communications and this station.